We all know people who seem to just navigate life changes so easily, right? They grow, they evolve.
Yeah, while others, maybe even ourselves sometimes, feel kind of stuck, like you're spinning your wheels.
Exactly. And if you've ever wondered, what makes that difference, especially when you're trying to make some changes yourself, well, you're definitely in the right place.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That desire to change, but hitting that internal wall,
Mm.
it's incredibly common and fascinating to unpack.
It really is. So for this deep dive, we've been listening to these excerpts from a podcast, Small Steps, Big Life Changes. And what I liked is that it's not about miracle cures.
No quick fixes.
Right. Our goal here is really to understand the mechanics. How does personal transformation actually work for people making those shifts?
And the source material grounds it in something really relatable learning English. It makes the challenges and the wins feel very real.
Okay, so let's start with why it's often so hard. Why does making a change sometimes feel like, I don't know, pushing a huge rock uphill? The podcast material dives right into those common roadblocks.
Yeah, the obstacles.
Fear of failure pops up first. That little voice, right? What if I mess this up? What if it doesn't work?
It's such a natural reaction to the unknown, but the source kind of flips it, doesn't it? Like, okay, but what if it does work out?
Yeah.
And even if you stumble, that failure isn't necessarily the end. It's often just, data information for the next try.
That's a great way to put it. Then there's that feeling of just being lost. Like, okay, I want things to be different, but where do I even begin?
The fog.
Yeah, the fog. And thinking you need this perfect, detailed plan before taking even one tiny step.
That's classic paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
And the podcast suggests something interesting. Sometimes just taking a step, any small step, is what clears the fog a bit.
Action creates clarity. I like that.
Exactly. You don't always need the full map beforehand.
Okay, and what about that inner critic? Oh, boy. The source talks about negative self-talk. I'll never be good at this, or specifically for them, I'm just not a language person.
Uh-huh. It's amazing how good we can be at talking ourselves out of things before we even start.
Seriously.
Because those internal stories we tell ourselves, they can be so powerful. They kind of shape our reality, often without us consciously realizing it, sabotaging the effort before it even gets going.
It's true. And lastly, this idea of waiting for motivation. I'll do it when I feel inspired. We've all said that.
Definitely. The waiting for the muse trap.
Yeah. And the podcast argues, pretty convincingly, I thought, that motivation often comes after you start, not before.
Right. It's not this magical spark you wait for.
They shared this moment, realizing they were waiting and waiting for this big motivational push.
That never came.
Exactly. Until they just began.
And that makes sense psychologically. Taking action, seeing even a tiny bit of progress, that creates the feeling of motivation. It feeds itself.
So really, the first big takeaway from the source material seems to be awareness. Just recognizing these common hurdles, the fear, the lack of direction, the self-criticism, the motivation myth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't really navigate around obstacles if you don't even see them clearly. That awareness is step one.
Okay, so we know what might be holding us back. How do we actually, get moving? The podcast really hammers home this idea of small daily improvements.
The power of consistency.
Yeah, they mentioned the 1% rule. Getting just 1% better each day, which sounds tiny, right?
Almost insignificant.
But it compounds over a year. That's like 37 times better, apparently. The math is kind of mind-blowing.
It really illustrates that cumulative effect. And the beauty of it, I think, is that 1% feels doable. It's not intimidating.
Right.
It builds momentum without overwhelming you, like putting tiny amounts into a savings account. It doesn't feel like much day to day, but over time.
It adds up significantly. Yeah. They also connected this to identity, referencing James Clear's Atomic Habits. How these small habits don't just change what you do.
They change who you are.
Yeah.
Or at least who you believe yourself to be.
Yeah. Each little action is like a vote for the type of person you want to become.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Your habits become evidence for your identity.
And the examples were so practical, like read for 10 minutes, practice English for just 5 minutes, try to catch a negative thought and flip it.
Things anyone could feasibly start.
Totally. And they shared this story, which I loved, about someone becoming fluent in English just by listening to podcasts every day. No crazy grammar drills, just consistent, small exposure.
That's a fantastic real-world example. It shows how these manageable daily inputs can lead to really big outcomes over time. It makes the huge goal feel less monolithic.
Definitely. So the message seems clear. Don't underestimate those tiny, consistent steps. They're way more powerful than they look.
It really prompts the question for you listening. What's one small thing you could realistically start, like today?
Yeah, what's that one tiny habit? Okay, so we've got actions covered. But the podcast goes deeper into something maybe even more fundamental, mindset.
Yeah, yes. The foundation.
Because how we think about our ability to change, that really sets the tone for everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The source drew that key distinction between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Right. Growth being I can learn, I can improve, and fixed being more like I am what I am, my talents are set.
And those core beliefs dramatically affect how you handle challenges.
Hmm.
Do you see them as opportunities to learn or as proof you're not good enough?
And this is where it got really interesting for me. They talked about the reticular activating system, the RAS.
Your brain's filter system, essentially.
Exactly. It focuses your attention on what you tell it is important. So if your internal narrative is constantly, I can't do this, guess what your brain looks for?
Evidence to confirm that belief. It filters in anything that matches I can't.
But no, if you start consciously focusing on, okay, I made a tiny bit of progress today or I learned one new thing, your RAS can actually start highlighting those things instead.
It's like training your attention. They use that great example.
Yeah.
You learn a new word and suddenly you hear it everywhere.
Yes. Your RAS is now primed to notice it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So our internal dialogue literally shapes what we perceive in the world around us. It's not magic, it's neuroscience.
And they gave 3 really practical ways to start kind of reprogramming that internal focus. Affirmations was one.
Positive self-statements, repeated regularly, like I am capable of learning this, or I am getting better every day.
It sounds simple, maybe even a bit cheesy to some.
But the consistency is key. It's about consciously planting those positive seeds over and over to counteract the negative weeds.
Okay, then visualization, actually picturing yourself succeeding.
Mentally rehearsing it, seeing yourself speaking English confidently or finishing that project, whatever the goal is, it makes it feel more real, more achievable, reduces the fear of the unknown.
Like building a mental blueprint for success. And the third one was gratitude.
Just actively focusing on what you do have, what's going well, what you're thankful for.
How does that help with change?
It shifts your whole perspective. Instead of focusing on lack or problems, you train your brain to see the good, the opportunities. It builds resilience and optimism.
So it's not about pretending problems won't exist, but about balancing the picture.
Exactly. It trains your brain to scan for positives, which can make challenges feel less overwhelming.
Got it. So the big takeaway on mindset is it's not fixed. It's a skill. We can actively cultivate a mindset that supports our growth.
It takes conscious effort, for sure, but the payoff in terms of actually achieving change is huge.
Okay, this next point they made really hit home for me. Taking action versus waiting for the right moment.
The I'll start when syndrome.
Totally. I'll start when I feel ready, when I have more time, when I know more. How often do we do that?
All the time. It's such a common trap, that pursuit of this perfect state of readiness that, let's be honest, rarely ever arrives.
Right, and the source material really pushed back on that, emphasizing that just starting, even when you don't feel ready, is usually the better path.
They shared that personal story, didn't they? About being scared to speak English, worrying about mistakes.
Yeah, and the waiting just made the fear bigger. It wasn't until they just jumped in, mistakes and all, that the confidence actually started to build.
It's a perfect illustration. Confidence often follows action, not the other way around. Waiting to feel brave before you act often means you never act.
And I loved that phrase they use, done is better than perfect.
Oh, that's a crucial one.
Because chasing perfection can just stop you cold. You never finish anything or never even start because it might not be flawless.
Right. Perfectionism is often just fear dressed up in fancy clothes. Embracing good enough allows you to actually make progress, to learn, to iterate. You get momentum.
So the advice is pretty simple, isn't it? Just begin.
Just start. Take one small step.
Even if it feels ridiculously small, that first move breaks the inertia.
Yeah.
And that momentum, as you said, it builds on itself.
Absolutely. They challenged listeners, didn't they? Think of one thing you've been delaying.
Yeah. And take one tiny action towards it today, not tomorrow.
That immediacy is key. Breaks the cycle of someday.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so taking action is vital. But then the podcast shifted focus a bit to the outside world, our environment.
Right. It's not all internal. What surrounds us matters.
A lot. The people we hang out with, the stuff we read or watch, it all shapes us, often more than we realize.
Hugely influential. They brought up that classic saying.
You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. It's a bit of a cliche, maybe, but there's real truth there. Their energy, their habits, their mindset, it rubs off.
For better or worse.
Exactly. So it really makes you pause and think, are the people in my immediate circle lifting me up, inspiring me towards growth?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not?
It's a tough question sometimes, and they offer practical ways to shape that environment more consciously.
Yeah, like actively seeking out positive influences, following inspiring people online, joining communities.
Like online groups for learners, or book clubs, or personal development forums, places where people are focused on growth.
And just as importantly, consciously reducing exposure to negativity.
Right. Maybe spending less time with chronic complainers, or limiting doom scrolling, or unfollowing draining social media accounts.
It's about actively curating your inputs, protecting your energy and focus.
They shed another personal story here about feeling stuck learning English.
Until they joined a community.
Yeah. Suddenly having people to practice with, share struggles, celebrate small wins,
Yeah.
that made all the difference.
That sense of shared journey, of belonging, it's incredibly powerful. Provides encouragement, accountability,
Yeah.
makes it feel less lonely.
So the call to action here is really about reflection, isn't it? Take an honest look at your environment.
Your 5 people, metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
are they fostering the growth you want? It's a vital piece of the puzzle.
Okay. So if we try and wrap this all up, the core idea weaving through all these points from the source material seems to be about agency.
Yeah, that we actually have significant control. Maybe more than we think.
It's not about waiting for lightning bolts of change. It's more about the steady accumulation of small wins,
Small actions, consistently applied.
coupled with actively working on our mindset, believing change is possible, and focusing on progress.
And consciously shaping our surroundings to support, rather than hinder, that progress.
It makes change feel less like a lottery ticket and more like building something brick by brick.
Exactly. It's a process. Gradual, often incremental, but definitely within our power to influence. Each step matters.
So for everyone listening, maybe just take a moment, thinking about everything we've discussed. What's one small thing, one tiny shift or action you could actually do? Like right now or today?
And maybe, to take that one step further,
Mm-hmm.
think about one specific area where you feel stuck. Based on all this, what's the absolute smallest step you could take right now to just nudge things forward, even a tiny bit?